What's up, guys? Evan Jarvis here for Grips Poker Training. In this video, you are going to learn the 7 reasons why it's important to be aggressive in poker and how often a bluff needs to work to be profitable. If you're excited to learn, click the subscribe button and join the team, and let's get stacking.
Next, we have aggression, which means taking more aggressive actions when given the option. One thing that all good players have in common, whether they are loose or tight, is that they play an aggressive game. Playing an aggressive game puts you on the offense and puts your opponents on the defensive. It is the ideal way to play poker because it keeps you in control of the action. This would mean choosing betting over checking and raising over calling in the majority of situations. There will obviously be exceptions, like when we are trapping or getting good odds, but in general, it's better to play aggressive than passive. So your first question probably is, why is it important to be aggressive? First answer, because it gives you multiple ways to win the pot. The first way you can win the pot is if your opponent doesn't match your bet and folds. The second way you can win the pot is if you end up having the best hand at showdown, which is when the hands are turned over. When you play passive, the only way you can win the pot is if you have the best hand. When you only check and call, you never even give your opponent the option of folding. And while the game is not entirely about making your opponents fold their hands, it's still an integral part of the game. Playing aggressively also allows you to use many other key concepts, such as value betting. Value betting means setting a fair price on the value of your hand and getting paid off the price you set. Value betting is a concept that exists when you have the best hand. However, you can also try to set the price when you think you might be beat to limit your losses rather than letting your opponent decide how much it will cost you to see their hand. Betting and being aggressive also allows you to bluff, which means making your opponent fold a better hand than yours. Anytime your opponent folds a hand, even if it's one worse than yours, you gain, except on the river. Every hand, even gut shots, single over cards, have some chance of getting lucky and winning the pot. This is referred to as their equity. When your opponent folds their hand, they surrender their equity in the pot, and this gives you a net gain, which is the size of the pot times whatever the percentage equity was that they forfeited when they folded. On the river, the exception, hands either have 100% equity, they're the best hand, or 0% equity, they are a second best hand. Now imagine how much you could make in value if you can make your opponents fold better hands on the river. That's one of the big values of bluffing. Making our opponents fold also means that we eliminate the chance of getting unlucky or getting sucked out on. When we can eliminate the luck factor from the game, it pretty much all comes down to skill. So what it comes down to is by playing aggressively, you give your opponents the chance to make a mistake. David Sklansky, a fantastic poker author, wrote the fundamental theorem of poker, and it implies that the goal of the game is to make as few mistakes as possible. You want to win the battle of mistakes. Playing aggressively enables you to do this, because if you don't play aggressively and you never give your opponents a chance to make a mistake, how could they ever make one? Playing aggressively also allows you to semi-bluff, which is similar to bluffing. You are betting without the best hand and would love for your opponent to fold. However, even when they call, you'll still have outs to improve to the best hand on later streets. When you are semi-bluffing early in a hand, you may be value betting by the river, or you may still be bluffing by the river. It all depends on what cards come off. So we know that betting and being aggressive is good, but how good is it? I'm sure there are some math people watching out there, and they want some proof of the benefits. So let's do some quick calculations. By the way, if you don't like math, you can skip this part. Actually, I'm just kidding. The math that I'm going to show you is very simple, and you'd be cheating yourself if you skipped any parts of this video. To determine the value we gain by bluffing, we need to look at what we're risking, which is the amount we're betting, and what we stand to gain as a reward, which is what's in the pot. Next, we want to look at the break-even success rate, which is risk divided by risk plus reward. The reason I'm using this as my example is because I want to show you that when you're playing aggressive, you still don't have to be right that much of the time. In poker, you tend to get good odds on your money, and thus your success rate when you make an aggressive play doesn't have to be that high. Take some real number examples to get you comfortable with this formula. It's very simple, but very important for your development as a player to practice this concept. Some quick examples I did on my own. I took a pot of $100. When I bluffed the full pot, my risk is 100, my reward is 100. And therefore, my break-even success rate, 1/2, is 50%. When I bluff 2/3 of the pot, risk is 67, reward is 100. Now it's 67 over 167, which yields a break-even success rate of 40%. Here's a chart that shows the break-even success rates for various bet sizings. Full pot, 50%. 3/4 pot C-bet, 43% required. If you bet half the pot, your break-even success rate is a success rate of 1 out of 3. Quarter of the pot, it only has to work 1 time out of 5. Even when you're making a huge bet, like double the pot, you still only have to be successful 2/3 of the time to break even. There is no amount that you would have to bet where you have to be right to make that bet 100% of the time. The cool thing about this is that usually a bet of 1/2 to 3/4 of the pot will yield the same results in terms of your opponent's reaction as a full pot size bet. So by selecting your bet sizing properly, you can dramatically improve your odds of showing a profit on that play. Also, note that if your opponent is folding more than the break-even success rate requires, you are showing a profit right away. You might think this is great. I can bet 1/10 of the pot, and my play only needs to work like 9% of the time to be successful. I can just bet tiny every time. That thinking is definitely on the right track. But at some points, bets are too small to ever work as a bluff. This is when you might want to use them as value bets. With experience, you will learn what bet sizes are enough to get the job done against which types of players, and what bet sizes are excessive and unnecessary. Now, I know what you're saying. This is all well and good. But how do I know that my opponents are going to fold 33% or 50% of the time? How am I supposed to determine that? Well, most casual players, the types you'll find in casinos and home games, play fit or fold poker, meaning they will only continue after the flop if their 2-card hand improved somehow. Players will completely miss the flop about half the time, meaning they won't flop any piece, not even a gut shot. There's your 50%. Semi-bluffing, we discussed on the last slide. The formula is a bit complicated and dicey, so I'll stick with the simple concept. If your math from pure bluffing is showing a profit, and you are actually in fact semi-bluffing, which means betting with a hand that has some equity in the pot, then it just means that your bet is even more profitable. Your equity works somewhat like an insurance plan. That is, sometimes when you hit your hand, you will get all the money back you invested in your bluff and then some. Now that you understand the math behind aggression, I want to introduce more benefits of aggression that apply at higher level poker as well. The first is that an aggressive player generally gets to control the action. Most recreational players are hoping to see cards cheaply, so rather than bet, they usually opt to check. There is a lot of slow playing going on, which means more checking. This gives the aggressive player full control of the action, and they will always be the ones setting the price and determining the pot sizes. They keep the pot small when they want to play a small pot, and they make the pots big when they have a big hand and want to play a big pot. Recreational players also like to try and trap aggressive players. If you are a smart, aggressive player, though, you will avoid these traps and truly have free reign over the table, since nobody will be able to put you to tough decisions. Being aggressive also instills fear in your opponents. You are always in the action, betting, check raising, making big plays, and in all honesty, most people don't enjoy being put to tough decisions. It stresses them out and makes them feel crappy when they make the wrong decision. Because of these feelings that they get, opponents will try to avoid you and also take cautious, safe routes against you. This will allow you to do as you please, since your opponents will be very reluctant to take a stand against you or get in your way. We've covered this concept a couple of times now, and it's basically the whole game. You want to force your opponents into making mistakes while avoiding mistakes yourself. When you have near full control of the action, it's very unlikely that you will be the one making mistakes because you will be in your comfort zone while they will be out of theirs. When opponents feel pressure, they often make mistakes. So keep the pressure on. Finally, playing in an aggressive manner will make you look like a bit of a maniac to some people, especially the tighter, more conservative players. They won't give you credit for being a good thinker and having a good poker mind, and may just assume that you're a fast and loose gambler who likes to throw money around. This means that you won't get credit for having strong hands as often as you should. When people think you're bluffing all the time, you can get paid off when you actually have a strong hand and suddenly bet big. Because they don't see the difference in the size of the bet, they just see he's betting all the time. Whereas if you play like a rock, everyone will know you only play big hands, and therefore they won't give you any action when you start putting a lot of money in the pot. It will be very difficult for you to get paid off when you actually make a hand. The aggressive player has the best of both worlds. He gets to pick up all the small pots without contest and has a much better chance of getting looked up and paid off in the big pots, which is where you will probably actually have the goods.
This presentation was brought to you by Grips Poker Training, where players become champions with our free poker training program. To collect your free poker training package, visit grips.com/free and take your tournament game to the next level. We also offer a 30-day cash game transformation program to help you fix your broken poker habits for good and turn you into a winning cash game player for life. To learn more about these offers, click on the links in the video description and we will help you get stacking. This has been Evan Jarvis for Grips.com. Take what you learned, go out there, and get stacking.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it educational and entertaining. If you want to join Team Grips, click on that subscribe button and tap that bell to be notified every time a new video goes live. For behind the scenes updates and motivational quotes from my poker journey, follow me on Instagram. And when you're ready to take one step closer to becoming poker's next champion, click on me in 3, 2, 1, and let's get stacking.